What is your big five? Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about my big five exercises. And I think everyone should have a big five. Originally on my channel and for my own training for years ago, again, because it was powerlifting oriented, they used to be squat, bench, deadlift, rows, and overhead press. Now, accordingly, I ended up with underdeveloped biceps as a result of that, while things like my back and everything became massive. So I have changed those things, particularly now that within the last year I've started caring about my physique a lot more. I've kind of adjusted a couple of those, and I've gone more in the direction of pull-ups and chin-ups as one of them. And then, of course, I've replaced overhead press with barbell curls, right? Replaced it with barbell curls. And here's what I'm going to say with that. In that case, for me, that those other two are representative of what my weak links are, which is really my arms more than anything else at this point, right? So when you look at my big five, two of them technically work the biceps and one of them is a smaller movement. And a lot of people say, well, what's wrong with the other one? I would say there's definitely problems with the other one, unless your front delts are the most important muscle in your whole body. In other words, overhead pressing is kind of redundant. For overhead athletes, it makes a lot of sense, but for everyone else, not necessarily. Bench press gives you more mileage, more muscles worked. You'll put on more muscle from it, right, because of all the extra chest involvement. But, people will also bring that up and like, well, you're biased because of the powerlifting, for the other three. And here's what I would say. Yes, but that's a good thing. And I've kind of made this case over and over and over and over and over. Powerlifting is the biggest strength sport in the world. We have more coaches who specialize in getting people elite at the squat, bench, and deadlift than just about any other lifts in the world. We have tons of studies, research on them, EMG data, biomechanics data, even studies that are looking at body composition and leverages that can determine how much people can squat, bench, and deadlift by studying their body without even testing it. Right? That's how heavily these movements have been studied. That is an advantage. So when people look at that and they're against them, it's not only contrarian, it's actually dumb. Because we have so much information on these three movements, they work 90% of the muscle in your body. That makes them extremely valuable, right? For comparative purposes, for understanding individual biomechanics on those exercises, there is so much knowledge on it that it makes sense to use them as part of your big five, right? And I'm not saying you have to. I'm saying that's why I do. But what's the deal with a big five? And then I'll go over to why I've had the others in there. So the deal with a big five. I think we need consistency in our training. And I think to some degree we should all have around 4 to 5 exercises that we focus on, that we push hard, that we have performance metrics and that we have perfected our technique on and everything, and that we build our programming around. Why? Because it gives us consistency. It gives us an anchor in our training. It gives us movements that we know we're going to tend to always be able to come back to. Even if we take short breaks from them, they are kind of our cornerstones of our training. Okay? And I would say that if you're going to do 5 of them, at least 4 of them should be big compounds. Right? The last one can be whatever you think really is most important for what you're trying to achieve or for your weak links or that you just really enjoy. Okay? And in that case, for me, it is the barbell curl. Because in my case, biceps tend to lag. But I've also made the case that I could build novice programs off of the squat, bench, and deadlift and maybe rows for people who aren't strong enough to do pull-ups, and then do a barbell curl. If they're strong enough to do chins and maybe triceps or a weak link, maybe a specific tricep extension like a lying extension, right? That would also be a very viable novice big five, right? Squat, bench, deadlift, and the chin up and a laying tricep extension. That would work great. If they're not strong enough to do chins and then biceps are a bigger priority, they could always do rows and then do a barbell curl. That would also be very viable. But any of those, I think, works for base building, and particularly, again, with always something needs to be arms in there. because at the end of the day, it seems like arms are always, in one way or another, something people care about. Now, in my case, of course, I do push extensions hard, so I'm not counting them as one of my big five, even though I pretty much religiously do them. Just like reverse hypers aren't in there. But those are, for me, kind of mandatory exercises, right? But again, I think people should have a big five, and I think it's a good idea to define those big five. I think it's a good idea to set performance goals on those. I think it's a good idea to make them really the most critical and important part of your training. And you can always change them later, right? Let's say 5 years down the road, that big five isn't meeting your needs anymore, we'll change them to something else. But I think our training always needs cornerstones, right? The foundation upon which we build our strength and our muscle mass. And in my case, it's tended to always kind of be the big three. Although it was close grip bench for a long time, then I finally went over to wider grip and just admitted that's what held my bench back for years. But the thing is, again, you can always change them based upon what your weak links are. But they need to be your foundation, right? Your base building. This is where you build your programming off of. And, for other people, they could be other movements. They don't have to be the ones that I pick. It could be a front squat. It could be a safety bar squat. But I do recommend that your big five definitely have some standing exercises, right? There should be some standing exercises in there. And I think for most people, a squat pattern movement or a deadlift, let's say you just hate all squatting and you wanted to go do other leg stuff, fine, then you better have a deadlift in there. But I think at least one of those big five needs to be a big standing structural movement. And I think largely the fifth one should always be something that really addresses what your weak links are going to tend to be long term, right? But again, it's just a concept that I've always believed in, and I've always found that it works well for me as a coach. I found that it works well for me as a lifter because, again, it gives us an anchor, it gives us cornerstones to our training because otherwise we have none. Because really, at the end of the day, exercises are largely arbitrary, right? Even my selection of the big three is arbitrary because those were almost arbitrarily selected. Other lifts could have been picked and made it into the biggest strength sport. Then we would have all that data on those lifts, and I might be inclined to promote those. But, those are exercises that are arbitrary lifts with arbitrary ranges of motion. But combined together, they do work 90% of the muscles in the body. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.